Well, y'all, today is the day. And I can't believe it. I cannot believe he pled guilty. Now, there is not one person on this planet not talking about this case. If you have read, hold on real quick, Baby Kisses. I have purple okra growing in my garden. Boo hiss. I have nothing out there, just a bunch of rainwater. It's going to be a big day, okay? Now I want to speak to all of you, okay? Before we get to Mike and we wear pink on Wednesdays, do you think that Brian Koberger will actually give a confession? Think about it. And while you're thinking, we're going to welcome Mike.
Oh, guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike? Leslie, guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
All right, Brian Koberger cannot sit with us. You've got to be kidding me. Absolutely disgusting. And let's get to what do we wear on Wednesday. So what should he do? He pled guilty. I'm seeing all the comments saying that, well, pleading guilty does not mean that he's guilty. Well, then why would you plead guilty? If you put all this evidence in front of someone and say, excuse me, we have this, and this, and that, and the plea deal, according to local stations, says it means that he cannot appeal and he gets 4 consecutive life sentences. Let's take a second to look allegedly until we know in an hour what he has done. They narrowed it down to 12 minutes. How long it took him to go and kill these beautiful people that have the whole rest of their life to live. Now, he decided to plead guilty, not today, when he signed it on Monday, because it was the same day that BTK, bind, torture, kill. And sadly, his professor, and we all know that Brian had been sending letters to BTK. He had. What will he do today? Well, his professor spoke out yesterday, and she actually blames herself in a certain way. She does. She thinks maybe her class egged him on to do this. She should not blame herself. Well, let's keep it lighthearted for a second and just tell everyone hi, please. Exactly. She has nothing to do with his sick ass. Nothing. Let's look at what she said. And a lot of information came out in the last 24 hours. Okay, for one, the Goncalves family is still super pissed. Okay? They are super pissed. Maddie's father said he's actually happy about the agreement. We have not heard from Maddie's mother or the stepfather that raised her. The Chapin family have said they are fine with this. But Xana's family and Kaylee's family are not happy. I could not imagine being in their shoes. I couldn't imagine. In 16 minutes, not 12, 16 that came out today. These 4 amazing people were murdered. Why? He has a manifesto that he's not allowed to read, cannot be published. It's called The Pretties. All right, let's see. Let's see what the professor says.
Right, a guarantee of life in prison versus the uncertainty of taking this thing to jury. And I just point out in Idaho, even a state like this that generally supports the death penalty, has inmates on death row. It's been more than a decade since they've executed someone. And I was thinking back to last year, they attempted an execution here and botched it. And now that defendant, who has been on death row for 40 years, more than 40 years, 4 decades, that people in that case have been waiting for that kind of resolution to come. That kind of thing is on the prosecution. Is there a benefit of having the certainty? I think the wild card in this, to me, was the Goncalves family and how vocal they were about wanting the death penalty, advocating for changes in the death penalty law to provide the firing squad as an option. I mean, it must be a hard way for the prosecution to sort of weigh those different factors.
Is there any chance that the judge could say, I don't approve this plea deal? Does that ever happen?
I mean, certainly in some cases, if there is a plea agreement that seems too lenient and the judge has concerns about it, that happens. I couldn't find a murder case where someone was agreeing to plead to life in prison and have a judge say, not life in prison, we got to do more. I mean, it seems like it's a huge sentence still in the scheme of things. So I have a hard time.
no judge is going to go forward and say, no, we want to continue with a trial. Okay? It's a sad fact that victims do not have a voice. True story. And victims' families don't get to dictate how it works. So right now it's split between Xana's family and Kaylee's family. Then you have Maddie's family, and you have Ethan's family that are 100% okay with putting him in jail, throwing him with a key, no, nothing, just no appeals, no anything. Now, I'm fire and brimstone about these things. I really am. I really am. And that's how I would be. I would be just like Steve Goncalves. I would. The question is, does he want to continue this for the next 20 years? Baby Kisses said, if the two families that don't want to watch can stay home, the others should have justice. Let's talk about that. What exactly is justice? We know with this plea deal, he will be behind bars beyond his lifetime. And a lot of this comes down to money. Money. Okay? Trials are super expensive. They are. They're super expensive. I mean, you have to pay detectives overtime. You have to get expert witnesses. There's one thing after another. But if he says, all right, sure, 4 life sentences, concurrently. So the question is, I mean, who's going to pay for justice? I mean, Ann Taylor's done. She wants to go back to her private practice and be done with it. I get where the Goncalves family is coming from. I get where Xana's family is coming from. But here's the whole thing. That doesn't mean the jury's going to do it. It doesn't mean they're going to. I mean, that's it. And that bitch, Lori Vallow, with her crazy ass, sucked up a ton of taxpayers' money in Idaho to the point where they don't really have a lot of money. Either way. If Brian suddenly said, yeah, I'll plead guilty. So you're telling me you won't shoot me. And I get 4 consecutive life sentences. Cool. And if the governor of Idaho is telling people we have no more money for these big trials, then what to do? Thank you, Midwest. And the DA is doing exactly what he has been taught to do. Take a deal, and that's it.
I'm imagining a judge stepping in that case, but this case has brought lots of surprises.
Yeah, that's a good point. My sense is too that the judge has probably been involved. I mean, the court date was set before it was made public. I think he was probably in the middle of these negotiations too, and has been part of it. So this probably isn't going to come as a surprise to him. Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's always great to see you. I'll see you in court tomorrow. Mike, again, has been covering the trial since the very beginning. I want to bring now, though, and we're joined exclusively by her, renowned forensic psychologist, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. As you may know, she was Bryan Kohberger's professor and advisor at DeSales University in Pennsylvania. She has not spoken publicly about Bryan Kohberger until now. She's been on this show talking about other cases, but she's been very, very careful not to talk about Kohberger because of the trial, because she was going to be a witness at the trial, and she now feels comfortable to open up to us. And we've got so many questions, Dr. Ramsland, that I've got so many questions I've wanted to ask you for so long. I want to start with, how did you first meet Bryan Kohberger? What classes of yours was he in?
Okay, I want to be just clear that I'm still within the FERPA limitations that protect students and student information. So I will talk within that. I met him in the fall of 2018 when he came to DeSales University. He had an associate's degree and he was going to get into our 4-year program as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisee for me because I managed the forensic track. And he was also in my class that semester.
And Dr. Ramsland talks about FERPA. I should have mentioned that there's a law, it's a federal law, I believe, that she is not allowed to talk about certain aspects of a student, their grades, certain parts of their academic life. It's almost like a HIP.
Okay. There is no reason for the public to ask for information before it's available. Okay? That makes sense, right? It makes perfect sense. Obviously, they know more than we know. So, a good friend of mine is going nuts saying that pleading guilty is not a confession. Well, because you've shown your ass for the last 2 years and 7 months picking apart these court documents while he has been held and there's no other suspect, no other DNA, then what are you going to do now? What do you want to do? This is crazy. And I respect this woman a lot. Not everything that's available is available to us. Okay? And I certainly will not have an issue with this woman. That's her opinion, and that's it.
So she's going to tell us what she can, but unless Bryan Kohberger signs off, she's legally not allowed to talk about certain elements of his academic career. So just keep that in mind if there's some things that Dr. Ramsland can't answer. What was your perception of him?
He seemed like eager to be in the classroom. He was polite. He was respectful, intense, and curious. And there was no reason for me to think that he was anything other than someone who was really interested in this potential career.
Was there anything looking back now that was strange about him or that you noticed?
When I look back, there really isn't anything that stood out to me. I think when you're a teacher, your instinct is to accept students at face value. You don't, start with suspicions or, and there really weren't any red flags. He was always really quite respectful and grateful. He would thank me for things. He was attentive. He would do the work. I didn't have any concerns.
What I think it was 4 classes that you taught him in. What were those classes?
There were 3 undergraduate courses in the forensic track that I taught, and he was in all of them. Well, one was Introduction to Forensic Psychology. Another was my death investigation class, which was called Psychological Sleuthing. And the third one was called Dangerous Minds, the Psychology of Antisocial Behavior. And then he got into the graduate program in criminal justice for a master's degree. And he took a course with me called Behavioral Criminology.
Is there anything, Dr. Ramsland, when you look back and you think about the curriculum of those classes, and not getting into his specific experience, but when you think about what you taught in those classes that you think, oh my gosh, he may have used that in what he's now accused of doing here in Idaho?
Well,
actually come out and talk about the cases where they pled to something that they actually didn't do, if they're okay with like providing receipts and everything and proof that they were truly innocent and all this stuff, because you can say whatever you want to, but we also need receipts to back it up. We should tell those stories because this goes way deeper than what.
Hang on. I have to call her, okay? There is a lot of evidence saying he did it because you don't have a receipt, which you're not entitled to, doesn't mean he was hit with a telephone book for 45 minutes and chained up. His sister turned him in.
What we are allowed to see on the surface level when it comes to what we're allowed to see on TV, what we're allowed to know about. Right now, while this crazy shit's happening in this case, how many other cases across the country is this kind of like corruption, secrecy happening with, and we have no idea? Thousands, absolutely thousands. I think Brian just realized he can't have any kind of life outside those walls, regardless if he did or not. I mean, I know that the Consalvases and a couple other people have made comments about that, but if a guy is truly innocent and there's obviously evidence and eventually proof and conviction of somebody else, like, I don't know how much, I don't know. I just feel like if he can really prove his point, I don't know. No, it's not obvious, actually, like literally at all. Actually, like you should probably look at the actual evidence, not just the stuff that like Ashley Banfield tells you, because she's like hardly ever corrects. Hey, Queen, how you doing? He never had a chance at a trial whatsoever, huh? You're right. Because the whole preliminary and everything got taken away. And then after the
That was his choice.
Preliminary came up, they're like, oh, now we have time to go and scan the house correctly. Now we have time to go and do this. And I'm just like, so y'all were just saying and lying to everybody and they mama that you were ready to go and you weren't. You didn't even have the right scans. You didn't have anything that was complete. You had nothing. You had drafts. You still at this point have drafts of certain things. Yeah. Morning. Really? I haven't even looked. I just know that we were on verdict watch. I haven't even paid attention to Diddy at all. And I got rid of this loser right here. He came in here calling people conspiracy theorists, acting like I'm some sort of grifter. Like, again, I don't care if you have a difference of opinion, but don't come in here yelling and screaming with your exclamation marks and come in here calling names and acting like an idiot and then go crying to everybody else on other channels that don't like me. Oh, she's so mean. You were so right. No, I match energy. Okay. So if you come in here being an idiot, I'm going to.
Okay, I'm done with that because she's my friend and we have different opinions. That's pretty much it. I believe the investigators and I believe that he's guilty.
The antisocial behavior course involves serial killers and mass murderers, and we do a lot of case analysis. I use two books that I wrote. One was written with the BTK killer, whom you just mentioned, and his decision process and the crimes and how he thought about them and felt about them and what was it like for him, to be caught. So that's a very intense book. And also I have one called The Mind of a Murderer, which was about various behavioral experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers to get as close as possible, spending a lot of time with them to get as close as possible to their process of becoming a criminal. And so he would have been exposed to that. I think some of now looking back, I would look at maybe some of the things that interested him as being, something that gives me pause. But we always have to think about, we all know, everyone in this field, forensic psychology and criminology, know that we could have students who might become offenders. But we also know that the vast majority of our students will not, and will instead go into a field like law enforcement, FBI, Secret Service, that make the world better, that protect us. So we know that there's always a risk that we're attracting somebody who wants to do something terrible. Hoping we won't ever have that, but in my case, I did.
Can you say, Dr. Ramsland, what it was looking back now that sort of raises your eyebrows specifically in terms of things in the class?
I think just the idea of wanting to study offenders and what their thought process was, how they felt about their crimes, wanting to study that and then finding out that this is a person who then is now saying he's guilty of doing these things. I have to look at the framework of what I taught and wonder, did I inspire him in some way? Did I, but I can't second guess that, because I may have inspired somebody else to become an FBI agent. And that's, unfortunately, in this field, that's what we live with.
I mean, you've been studying serial killers most of your life, but when you talk about the fact that what you taught may have inspired this, that's got to be hard for you to process, I would imagine.
It's terrible, very hard. And it's not just what happened to the victims. I really thought Brian Koberger was a promising student who really could have made a mark in this career in a very positive way. I thought that. So disappointed, angry, and very shocked that this is who he turned out to be, and horrified for the victims and their families. Just horrified. I mean, I worked with Dennis Rader closely for 5 years. I met the victims' families. I saw the devastation that these kinds of acts can have. And I have to always keep that in mind when I'm teaching these subjects.
What did you think when you first heard that Brian Koberger, your former student, was arrested for this?
I was completely floored. I didn't believe it. And his demeanor that we saw on media was that he was confident that he was going to be able to prove his innocence. So I wanted to wait and see. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as months go by and he kept saying that he had an alibi, and I wondered, well, why are you sitting in jail?
Okay. He scouted her out because he was obsessed with Dennis Rader. Okay. And there is DNA all over that house. All over. So if there is some kind of something going on and all of these things never existed, why did he change his plea on the same day that Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, pled guilty? I mean, why? I understand there's some people in here saying right now that, oh no, he was forcing this. What hell you think this is? 1942, Mississippi? Plea deals were put in front of him for a long time. A long time. A long time.
Give us your alibi, get out. And that wasn't happening. And then it was really when he said his alibi, and it was clearly not an alibi, and he would have known that, certainly from all the classes that he had through undergraduate and graduate work. He would have understood that wasn't really an alibi. I think that was when I was really, floored that this is my student who has done these things.
You mentioned, you studied BTK, the serial killer. You met with him many times in prison. This is what you do in a hope to prevent these things from further happening and understand the mind of a serial killer. Would you want to study Brian Koberger? Have you put any thought into that? Is that something that you think could be possible?
I've been thinking about that for 2.5 years. I would. This is my work. If he wanted to do that, I would.
That's what he wanted. He wanted to study Dennis Rader, the BTK killer. That's who he wanted to study. It's on his entry forms. He wrote to him in jail. Remember when Dennis Rader, BTK, said on Koberger, no. And I have made a joke of it for years going, can you imagine sitting in your jail cell and you can't take a phone call? You can't open a letter. You don't want to help this guy who was in this woman's class. And she's blaming herself. That's what she's doing. That's the truth. She's blaming herself.
I know within the framework of this is what we do to try to look at developmental trajectories, the triggers, so that we can see the red flags faster. We can prevent people like this from wreaking the havoc that they do. So if he wanted to do that, I know that he's got the intellectual capacity to do it, to be self-reflective, to help think through how his life came to this. And so I would definitely do it if he were willing. And it would be hard, but I think because I have so much material from him, I have questions for him that I think nobody else but me could ask.
And just my last question, Dr. Ramsland, I mean, you are the person that I think of who, if anyone could see through someone and see that they have a secret side, I would think it would be you, because this has been your life's work and trying to figure that out. And in a sense, it almost feels like Bryan Kohberger even had you fooled.
Well, I study the ones who are really good at it because I want to truly try to understand what can we see in the constellation of behaviors that will tip us off earlier, because people who are really good at passing as normal and keeping their dark side hidden can fool people, can fool all the experts for a long period of time. I think anybody in my field will tell you they can be duped by a really skillful.
Let's think about that. Okay, let's think about that. He was there to learn. Okay. And in 20 minutes, yes, I will have his plea on. Hang with me. Okay. So I understand what the professor is saying. She's blaming herself. I don't understand why she is. But this is the person that he was obsessed with.
Dennis Rader.
This guy talks about killing like you and I talk about changing clothes.
Hi, I'm Nick from True Crime Uncut. Welcome to Questions With. This week, we're speaking to homicide detective Tim Relf about how he helped capture the notorious BTK serial killer following 10 murders and a 30-year manhunt.
We talked to him for many, many hours. He indicated that this is the greatest accomplishment of his life, and he hadn't really been able to talk about it. Wichita didn't have a boogeyman, they had BTK. That's what your family was afraid of. Before then, we had never seen someone, and it would be a long time to learn it, but we'd never seen someone that killed for sport. It's hard to explain the shadow that he kind of put over the city back in the 70s, especially ladies that lived by themselves came home.
All right, that's the key word. You kill for sport. Okay. As you remember, if you don't, go to the playlist. When they said it wasn't about the people, it was about the house.
Predatory type of person. So, I'm not going to say I'm the person who can spot this. I can see things like if you have a rigid personality and you're threatening, those are red flags that are very clear. Or you have a mental instability and you're drawing, violent images. These are things we can see and we can anticipate. But if somebody's presenting themselves as a completely normal human being engaged in life the way, that according to our expectations, it's really hard to see through that. And as a teacher, I am not initially suspicious that students are there for the wrong reasons. And so I think some of us have what I would call a cognitive disadvantage, because we are giving the benefit of the doubt to students. And I think that's certainly what happened. That's why I would want to work with him and study him, because I want to understand how he was able to completely fool me.
Well, it'll be interesting to see as this moves along, if that indeed ends up happening. Dr. Ramsland, appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing this insight into your former student. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We know what's supposed to happen in Brian Kohberger's hearing tomorrow, but there is still a ton that we don't know. Will we actually hear him say the word guilty? Will he tell the court and the families everything they want to know about that terrible night? Will the judge agree to everything that the lawyers agreed to? Still kind of a lot up in the air. We've got News Nation's Jesse Weber. He's going to join me with his take on all of that and the big hearing, what we should expect coming up tomorrow here in Boise. That's coming up next, live from Idaho.
I think he's looking for his shining moment. I think that's what he wants. He wants a moment like this.
I think I took Mr. Otero's watch. I guess I took a radio. I forgot about that, but apparently I took a radio.
Why did you take these things?
I don't know. I have no idea. Just
What happened then?
I got the keys to the car. In fact, I had the keys, I think, earlier before that, because I wanted to make sure I had a way of getting out of the house and clean the house up a little bit, make sure everything's packed up, and left through the front door. And went over to their car, and then drove over to Dylan's, left the car there, then eventually walked back to my car.
All right. Now, sir, from what you have just said, I take it that the facts you told me apply to both all of counts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Rader.
Your Honor,
Yes.
one thing needs to be corrected on that record, and that is originally, I believe, he indicated 1834 Edgemore. The address was actually 803 Edgemore.
I asked him to occurred in Central County. He indicated what had happened. I don't believe the exact address is important. All right, Mr. Rader, we will now turn to count 5.
You are so right, Broken Golf Doll. He is looking for his BTK moment. He will. I have a feeling that part of his plea agreement, besides sitting around in your jail cell like Dennis Rader, means he does not go to general population. He will sit there and keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting on his food tray and things like that. He will have guards out there. Let him play basketball. The only hope we have, which by the way is not going to happen, is if the judge rejects the plea deal. And the only way that the plea deal could be rejected by the judge is if it's not signed. He gets up and says, no, I don't want it. I was under duress. If he's already done it, it's done. There is nothing that the judge can do.
What happened when you
I
came back?
actually had 2 handguns. Well, when I started strangling, either the parent broke or he broke his bonds, and he jumped up real quick like. I pulled my gun and quickly shot him. I hit him in the head. He fell over. I could see the blood. And as far as
Okay, hold on. Pat said, some say the judge will have to accept the plea now because he's basically confessed. So how can he have a fair trial? Well, I think a lot of the fair trial went out the window when Dateline NBC, all the evidence was leaked on there. Again, Idaho doesn't have any damn money since Lori Vallow has sucked up all their freaking money for years. That's it. And no judge, no prosecutor, no defense attorney wants to go to trial. They already know what's in their folder. They don't want to do it. They won't do it. They don't want to do it. You sit down with Tokyo phone books in front of everyone and you say, this is what we have on you. That's what we have. So we go to trial and we'll kill you in 18, 20 years, or we'll take it off the table. See, I've said it for years. About several states, not just Idaho. There is a reason that the DA in Payette County does not move forward on Michael Vaughn's case, because the whole state has been scrambling about that nutcase, Lori Vallow, and her side piece, Chad Daybell. Now we have another nutcase. What's more important? It's hard to decide. It really is. Because a human life is a human life. And this is the human life that, for whatever reason, Brian Kohberger decided to model his life after.
as I concerned, I thought he was down and was out, and then went and started to strangle Catherine. And then we started fighting because bonds weren't very good. And so back and forth, we fought.
You and Catherine?
Yeah, we fought. And I got the best of her, and I thought she was going down, and then I could hear some movement in the other room. So I went back, and Kevin, no, I thought she was going down, and I went back to the other bedroom where Kevin was at, and I tried to re-strangle him at that time, and he jumped up, and we fought, and he at that time shot me because he got my pistol that was in my shoulder here. I had my Magnum in my shoulder, so
Shoulder holster.
Hmm?
Did you have it in the shoulder holster?
Yes, and I had the Magnum in the shoulder holster. The other one was a 22. And we fought at that point in time, and I thought it was going to go off. I jammed the gun, stuck my finger in there, jammed it. And I think he thought that was the only gun I had, because once I either bit his finger or hit him or something got away, and I used the 22 and shot him one more time. And I thought he was down for good that time.
All right, so you shot him a second time.
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
Went back to finish the job on Catherine, and she was fighting. And at that point in time, I'd been fighting her. And then I heard I don't know whether I was basically losing control. The strangulation wasn't working on her. and I used a knife on her.
You say you used a knife on
Yes,
her.
yes.
What did you do with the knife?
I stabbed her. She said either stabbed 2 or 3 times, either here or here. Maybe 2 back here and 1 here, or maybe just 2 times back here.
You were pointing to your lower back and your
Yeah, underneath the ribs.
Okay, so Brian Koberger studied this over and over and over. Hey, Kaylik, love you, sister. That's why I'm wondering, and I'm on pins and needles, if Brian Koberger is going to try to one up the BTK killer. I'm really concerned about this. And as far as the families getting justice, well, define justice. If somebody walks out of jail like that no bond shit in New York and Illinois and California, I'd be hotter than a pistol. I'd be hotter than a pistol. But when the DA says, sign it, and you will be behind bars forever and a day, then that's it. I understand that death sounds better to most people because we're sitting here in our mind and we're like, oh, good, firing squad. That won't happen for 20 years. It won't happen for 20 years. I just don't know. And let me tell you what, Oklahoma is a big death penalty state. Huge, huge. All right? Boom. Gone. You go to Big Mac. That's it. That's it for you. The families don't get, I'm saying it wrong. When does the peace of mind come? We have spoke about people on death row in Oklahoma. And after, 20, 30 years of going to probation hearings and appellate attorney, everything. Anything. I understand that Steve Goncalves and his family is very upset. But for their peace of mind, this might be better. Because this guy, he's a sicko.
in your lower abdomen.
Yeah, underneath the ribs, up underneath the ribs.
So after you
Okay, sorry, I got a tangent. Excuse me. So when he explains how he stabbed all these people. Okay. The coroner, that dum-dum, she explained all the stab patterns. Baby Kisses said, if on death row, there's no possible parole meetings. Oh, you mean I mean appeals, not parole. And you're right, just chilling. They don't deserve this. I just really wish they would have sat down with all of them and said, here's the pros and here's the cons of doing this.
you stabbed her, what happened?
Actually, I think at that point in time, Well, it's a total mess because I didn't have control on it. She was bleeding. She went down. I think I just went back to check on Kevin, or at that basically same time I heard him escape. It could be one of the two. But all of a sudden the front door of the house was open and he was gone. And I tell you what I thought. I thought the police were coming at that time. I heard the door open. I thought, no, that's it. And I stepped out there, and I could see him running down the street. So I quickly cleaned up everything that I could and left.
All right, now, Mr. Rader, you indicated that at the Oteros you did not have a mask on. Did you have a mask on at the Brights?
No, I didn't.
All right, so what happened then?
I had already had the keys to the cars. And I thought I had the right key to the right car. I ran out to their car. I think it was a pickup out there. And I tried it, didn't work. And at that point in time, he was gone, running down the street. I thought, yeah, I'm in trouble. So I tried it, didn't work. So I just took off, went east, and then worked back toward the WSU campus where my car was parked.
All right, so you had parked your car at the Wichita State University
Yes, sir,
campus?
on the campus,
How far away was the Brights residence?
Oh, I parked, was that 13th? And they were on 13th. Was it 17th? Yeah. I was just about 1 block south of 17th where the car was. There's a park there. I parked at that park, and then I walked to 13th to the Brights residence. So I basically ran back.
All right, so you were able to get to your car and get away.
Yes, sir.
Now let's turn to count number 6. In that count, they claim on March 17th, 1977, in Sedgwick County, Kansas, that you unlawfully killed Shirley Vian maliciously, willfully, deliberately, and with premeditation by strangulation, inflicting injuries from which she did die on March 17th, 1977. Can you tell me what you did on that day?
Yes, before Vian was actually on that one, she was completely random. There was actually someone across from Dillon's was a potential target. It was called Project Green, I think. I had project numbers assigned to it. And that particular day, I drove to Dillon's, parked in the parking lot, watched this particular residence, and then got out of the car and walked over to it. It's probably the police report, the address. I don't remember the address now. Knocked, nobody answered it. So I was all keyed up. So I just started going through the neighborhood. I'd been through the neighborhood before. I kind of knew a little of the layout of the neighborhood. I've been through the back alleys, viewed where certain people live. While I was walking down Hydraulic, met a young boy. Asked him if he ID some pictures. Kind of was a rust, I guess, or roost, as you call it, and kind of feel it out. And saw where he went. And I went to another address, knocked on the door. Nobody opened the door, so I just noticed where he went and went to that house, and we went from there.
Now, you call these projects, were these sexual fantasies also?
Potential hits. In my world, that's what I call them.
All right. So
They're
you
called
went,
projects, hits.
all right, and why did you have these potential hits? Was this to gratify some sexual interest or?
Yes, sir. I had a lot of them, so it's just if one didn't work out, I just moved to another one.
All right. So, as I'm to understand it, then on the 17th of March, 1977, you saw this little boy go into a residence, and you tried another residence. No one was there. You tried another residence. No one was there, so you went to the residence with the little boy.
Yeah. And I watched where he went.
What happened then?
After I tried this one residence, nobody came to the door. I went to this house where he went in, knocked on the door, and told him I was a private detective. Showed him a picture that I had just showed the boy, and asked him if they could ID the picture. And at that time, I had the gun here, and I just kind of forced myself in. I just walked in, just opened the door and walked in, and then pulled a pistol.
What gun? What pistol?
357 Magnum.
So you only had one gun with the pistol?
Yes, sir.
What happened then?
I told Mrs. Vian that I had a problem with sexual fantasies, that I was going to tie her up, and that
Now, I do not think, not that I'm smart enough to put that together, that Brian was about what BTK was about. And to be quite honest, BTK wasn't either. He was more about submission. Okay. So what Brian was trying to do was in he was honestly trying to one up another killer. Okay. There's some sick tickets out there. It's not common. It is not common. I see people are dropping out because they don't want to hear what BTK is saying. But this is part of his manifesto. Brian.
I might have to tie the kids up, and she would cooperate with me at that time. We went back. She was extremely nervous. I think she even smoked a cigarette. And we went back to one of the back areas of the porch, explained to her that I had done this before. And I think she would, at that point in time, I think she was sick because she had a night robe on. And I think if I remember right, she had been sick. And I think she came out of the bedroom when I went in the house. So anyway, we went back to her bedroom, and I proceeded to tie the kids up, and they started crying and got real upset. So I said, "No, this is not going to work." So we moved them to the bathroom. She helped me, and then.
Okay, Sailor has a question. What time does it start? It starts at noon, but they're 4 minutes behind. I'm assuming that's a lag from Court TV because they have to edit. So what I'll do is I will turn this off and I will put on what they're doing right here. Houndlover said, "The ones who matter are still here. Brian's manifesto needs to be released just in case there are other victims." True. Exactly. Gaelic said, "Brian's phone allegedly had snuff porn on his phone." Really? Him? I never heard that. I never heard it. I mean, they're already in court right now. But we're going to be behind. You guys want to watch something else? Listen to some music until it comes on to relax our nerves? Anyone? Baby Kisses says no, go back. You want to hear more about BTK? Go to BTK. All right, I can do that. Okay, let's take a vote. Do you want to see the rest of BT? Oh goodness, that guy's always on a motorcycle. Do you guys want to see the rest of BTK's confession before we get to court or music? Put a 1 in chat if you want BTK. Okay, all right. Okay.
About those. Even into trial, had the trial continued to happen, they were going back and forth on where those alternate suspect evidence pieces would be used in the trial. So again, those things did not work. Judge Hippler consistently denying the fact that the death penalty could be taken off the table. And that puts us here today at Kohberger potentially pleading guilty to avoid getting the death penalty. Instead of the death penalty, the prosecution says they would be pursuing 4 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, so I've been listening to a lot of legal analysts who say that really because the defense exhausted all of their options, they felt that a plea deal would be the final resort, and that's where we are here today. So that is why it is expected that the defense will come in and enter this guilty plea.
Yeah, so we have been taking a look at the courthouse, of course, all morning. Earlier this morning, we had people lining up to get into the courthouse. Of course, spots reserved for family and our Amanda Rowley there as well. As soon as that gets started, we will be there to have information. We actually have somebody with us here this morning, an expert. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But for now, we just want to give you one quick recap. If you're just joining us here, this is about the Bryan Kohberger plea deal hearing. That was supposed to start at 10 o'clock this morning. We are about 10 minutes past that. It's happening 11 o'clock Boise time. It is in Ada County where this is happening. This is for Bryan Kohberger, the person who is accused of murdering Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, Kaylee Consalvis, and Ethan Chapin. This right here, a live look right now at the Ada County Courthouse where this will be taking place today. We are expecting Kohberger to plead guilty, changing his plea of not guilty in order to avoid the death penalty.
All right. We do have a guest with us here in studio. Steve Graham joining us here in the KREM 2 studio. Former prosecutor and defense lawyer. You are a defense lawyer. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Yeah, this is a big news day here. A lot of people watching this case, and obviously you're not directly involved, but you can kind of glean some perspective on this situation. Can you tell us more about how the defense got to this point? Do you feel like they really exhausted all of their options?
They did. They were nothing if not thorough. And they really kept at it and, ended up sparing their client's life after, foreclosing other options. So they were very thorough and, got a good deal for their client, I believe.
I think something that's interesting for somebody who hasn't followed a case of this caliber, it felt like every 2 weeks, every month, we were seeing something else from the defense. Is that a normal thing in a case of this caliber?
Well, yeah, they're not supposed to leave any stone unturned. They were, very thorough. And that's typically how it goes. When someone's life is on the line, they're supposed to do everything possible to spare that individual's life.
So another question that we've had is the families, a couple of them potentially not so happy with how this happened, whether they accept the fact that it's a plea deal or not. The Gonsalves family has been very vocal about the fact that it happened very quickly, it felt rushed. Is this normal, or are typically families more involved in this plea deal process?
Typically, I think on a case of this, gravity with such a heinous act, times 4, there would be more of a, opportunity, I think, for them to sit down and meet with the prosecutor. So that is a little surprising, but, plea deals are often struck at the last minute too. But it's a prosecutor's job to really listen to the families exhaustively.
But there's 4 in this case.
Yeah. And do that exhaustively. And we've heard the criticism that that wasn't entirely done.
Sure. So the Gonsalves family, obviously, they have been the most vocal of the 4 families. One of the things that they are asking for is not only the guilty plea, but also a full admission, details of the night of the murders, but also locating the murder weapon. Is that something that they can ask for in a plea deal in a situation like this, or would the judge not allow that?
They could ask for that. A prosecutor may set whatever conditions he or she wants on any offers made. And it doesn't seem like a real unreasonable request from the perspective of the family. Some of that might be coming later on, but it seems like if his life is spared, then the family should be entitled to get answers to these questions. So that's I guess, to be seen.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through the process of how a plea deal works? Who would have asked for it or given it, or like just the whole process of how this would work?
Well, plea negotiations can often be rather quick. It can be made on the elevator coming down from the courthouse at the end of the day. And, when one side is ready to say uncle and, give up their earlier request, give up the insistence that he's innocent, give up this insistence that there be the death penalty. So it might have happened really quick. It seems to have happened real quick, or it may have been percolating for months. But yes, in my experience, these things can be brokered rather quick.
Well, Mr. Graham, thank you so much for joining us. We do want to let our viewers at home know that the stream in Ada County has just started. Excellent. And again, we are streaming this now live on Creme 2 Plus. You can watch it in its entirety. Again, Creme 2 Plus is our free streaming app. You can download it and watch for free.
case, but in other cases where defendants are entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases processed in those cases. It's also highly inappropriate. A court is not supposed to, and this court will never take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases. Court should.
Can you all see it and hear it? It was frozen for a second because they were having technical difficulties.
And I always will make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me, period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement. I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because again, it is not appropriate and frankly not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to act.
Hold on, Angie baby, why do you keep saying court has started? It's on the channel right now. Is everyone seeing what I'm seeing right now? I mean, can you put a 1 in chat if you're seeing it? Put a 2 if you're not. I understand the live stream, not on my end, on the other end. Okay, all right. Yeah, she might be behind, that's fine.
A matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty. This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. If I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was, once I learned of the defendant's decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing. Also, when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom you, many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing. Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum, the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment: burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing, to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal, as well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count. So theoretically, the only thing the court could do would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counter offers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Koberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that so that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now, while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter not being before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Koberg, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed substantive questions? Let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include, on count one, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. Count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder. The consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to each of the victims of your crime to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yeah.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that are that you've been charged with that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As as I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Is anyone other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Koberg, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence.
Yes.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case. Should you not plead guilty, did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right. So as to count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count 2, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count 3, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count 4, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count 5, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
I want to also make for the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form a document entitled Written Factual Basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
And did you agree with the written factual basis that is included there?
Yes.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing in his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Koberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Koberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Lake Tahoe County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was a traffic stop of Mr. Koberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop, Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Koberger's name, Brian Koberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then move to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Koberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include a trial, video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway, just across the state line from Moscow. It would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. At approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had
All right. We have some kind of, there's some feedback. Okay, let me try this again. Okay.
sleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were two other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, the defendant's car is seen on a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom were to see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walinta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads in very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks it heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, this Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Koberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. He was there for about 10 minutes and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th, 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Koberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicles seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Koberger proceeded to finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and returned to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Koberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Koberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, A DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene. I can tell the court and the public the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, you know, in those compartments in the doors. You can try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So, Your Honor, at the end, the state submits that the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that presenting court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, excuse me, Mr. Koberger entered the residence of 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice forethought, Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Koberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogen, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Right. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. Court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and that finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to.
Oh, hang on. Just Chillin said, wonder how much they made to keep him from the death penalty. You mean how much they saved? I mean, all the money they have spent to find him and house him. Death penalty is extremely expensive, and trials are even more than death penalty. But no one is making any money that I can tell.
to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than one full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously, we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in one day.
Defense agree with that in terms of the time frame?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August. The week of July 22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties or the next week, the week of August 4 is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. We'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, sir.
All right. Any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
You're right. I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
Would have no objection for the order to remain in place through
All right.
sentencing.
I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be withdrawn in order to give the parties the space and time to prepare to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said, obviously, I don't think the defendant, a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes. He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else to say?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated and those 4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned. All right, please.
That's it. That's it. Now, some of the families are absolutely fine with the letter that they received, and they spoke with the prosecuting attorney on Friday. Now, there's one family member that says they were never notified and did not like it and said no, wants to continue going forward. Now, Ethan Chapin's mother, she can't be happy about it. She can't be happy about this, but because her son is dead. Her son was murdered. Okay, that's the truth. She wanted everything to go as smooth and as possible. Maddie's father said he's actually thankful that this went the way it did because they will never have to see his face again. Xana's father had some questions as to why they were told by letter. He lives in Arizona. So I guess in a few weeks, we'll see the sentencing, and I see both sides. I mean, I see all of the above. I do. There's a huge, huge debate right now. You could see that the judge was super pissed about people calling him and, leaving voicemails and bothering his law clerks and everything like that. He was just like, yeah, no. No, we're not doing that. That's crazy. That is crazy. I mean, we're talking 4 consecutive life sentences. If you want the death penalty, the jury may not do it. Either way, he will never see the light of day. Put a 1 in chat if you want to talk about this again tomorrow. Remember, no appeals, no parole, no nothing. Nobody ever has to see him again. Consecutive life sentences. I mean, hell, just look what they gave him for burglary. V said either way. True Crime Beat said this is rough. And victims have no voice in these cases. They have none. So, I mean, either way, he's in the books. He will be studied by the FBI for a long time. And I think, honestly, he took the plea agreement because he knew his sister was the one that turned him in. I really do. She's the one. Hold on. Shannon said there is no max of life here in Idaho. Most charges have a minimum. Have to do. Okay, well, they said 4 back-to-back. And also, they stacked on the burglary charges. So, I just don't see him ever getting out. All right, tell me what you guys want to talk about tomorrow. You want to talk again about Bushy? Because I have a lot to say. Sailor said, what's a burglary for? Breaking in. Breaking in. All right, you guys are the absolute best. I cannot believe all this happened in the last couple days. And I will see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.